still haven't been resolved, but in the Leeds North East constituency it seems to be a problem for both Labour and the Tories. Greg has been meeting voters.
Leeds, home to the third largest Jewish population in the UK. Over the decades, the majority of the community have settled here in the Moortown area in the Leeds North East constituency. In the post-war era, it's only ever been represented by a Labour or Conservative MP. And at this election, there is a growing sense of anger and frustration.
BBC Radio Leeds.
The Conservative Party has suspended its own election candidate for Leeds North East, while he's investigated over claims he made anti-Jewish remarks.
Earlier this week, Amjad Bashir was suspended after it was revealed that in 2014 he said British Jews were brainwashed extremists when they returned from travelling in Israel.
The large Jewish community in this constituency say they are angry that a Conservative candidate who has expressed those comments was ever allowed to stand in this seat. However, they say that anger is also compounded by the fact that the Labour candidate, who is Jewish himself, they believe hasn't done enough to represent them and support them in this constituency. Hi there, it's Greg here from the BBC.
Behind the security gates of this kosher bakery, people are digesting the news of what they see as another example of anti-Semitism.
I think the party will probably want to take a look at their processes again because they've clearly failed on this occasion. In the heat of the current political debate, particularly around anti-Semitism.
The Tories may no longer be campaigning for Amjad Bashir, but because the nominations closed a week ago, he remains on the ballot paper as the Conservative candidate.
What is the mood in this constituency when it comes to the choice of this election?
The mood is dismay and consternation. Just this morning I had a member of my synagogue come to me and say, "Rabbi, I know it's my decision, you can't decide for me, but I'm struggling. Can you give me any guidance as to how I should vote?" Now, that's not normally a question that a rabbi gets involved with, but this is the level of consternation that people have about the current situation.
For the last 22 years, Leeds North East has been represented by this man.
Hamilton Fabian, Labour Party.
Fabian Hamilton is Jewish, but in recent years, relations with some of his constituents have been tense, with claims he's not done enough to condemn anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I am stuck between the rock and the hard place of what to do. Every Labour voter I know, and there's quite a few of them, were this time going to vote Conservative.
Really?
This time, and possibly this time only, going to vote Conservative. And a great many of my friends would not have voted Labour because of the situation, and now they have another situation to deal with.
On the left-hand side here, it's the Etz Chaim synagogue, and they had swastikas daubed on that sign.
When did that happen?
It was about 2 or 3 years ago now.
Lisa Baker is president of the Leeds Jewish Representative Council. At the local community centre, she tells me her issues with Fabian Hamilton.
I don't accuse Mr Hamilton of saying anything wrong or saying anything anti-Jewish. I make that very clear. But what I do find abhorrent is that Mr Hamilton has not stood up and condemned those within his own party who have clearly articulated anti-Jewish racism.
An example she uses is Fabian Hamilton not signing a statement to condemn former Labour MP Chris Williamson being reinstated to the party in June. Mr Williamson said Labour had been too apologetic in its response to criticism over anti-Semitism.
Fabian Hamilton did not choose to sign that, and on behalf of our community I challenged him on the reasons why, and I found his response was very lacking in substance and reassurance for our community.
In response, Fabian Hamilton says he has campaigned against anti-Semitism in his party and wider society. He told us it wasn't appropriate for him to comment on the Chris Williamson case while it was ongoing, but is pleased the party suspended him and that he's no longer a member.
It's a Hobson's choice. Very many people in Leeds North East do not know which way to turn, and whoever is elected will have to do massive amounts of work within the community to restore the faith.
And you can see the full list of candidates standing in the Leeds North East constituency on the screen now and online over at bbc.co.uk. Caroline, before we move on, voters may be thinking it's rather strange that a candidate that has been suspended in the case of the Conservative Party is still standing for them in the election.
That's right. I mean, we know that at 4 o'clock on Thursday last week was the sort of deadline for candidates to be able to stand in this election. And obviously, in this instance, there's been an incident which has occurred beyond that. Now, I find it strange that there's nothing that can be done in that instance because it really does disenfranchise part of that community, particularly when there are such vital and crucial issues being debated, such as your video has highlighted. I mean, it also raises enormous questions about vetting processes, particularly in this modern age of social media. We've seen so many candidates fall foul, most of them prior to that 4 o'clock deadline. But I can completely sympathise, really, with the constituents living there on both sides, really, in that they no longer have a Conservative candidate. And equally, if they have no faith in their Labour candidate, you know, that does present issues for people within the Jewish community, particularly when there have been MPs who have prominently stood up and denounced certain aspects of their own party. And so, you know, I mean, a big issue for those people there.
All right, we're going to